Jeff in Woodbridge.
Hello. I totally agree with the last two passages you just were talking about. These are not asylum seekers. They're migrants. They haven't asked for asylum in any country they've passed through. France is a beautiful, democratic country, run nicely, beautiful place to live. Why don't they ask for asylum? They spend weeks and months on the coastline.
Jeff, have you met any asylum seekers? Ever?
No.
Well, thank you for being honest, Jeff. You've never met an asylum seeker in your life?
No.
Why do you feel able to ring the show and give us...
Because I don't agree that if you enter this country illegally, if you've come through Italy, Spain, obviously they're all in France, which is, as far as I'm aware, a nice, democratic, well-run country. Jeff, and they spend weeks, possibly months, waiting for the sea to be smooth, to jump on a boat and cross the channel.
Jeff,
and they've been told it's the land of milk and honey.
Jeff, don't you appreciate that when we're talking about those fleeing, a minority will want to come to the UK because they have relatives here, because they've learned English back in their language, because they're Christian. They will have links, and they will choose, I'd like to get to Britain to claim my asylum if I can. Do you accept that in a world where people do flee persecution, do flee war, a minority will want to claim asylum here in the UK? Yes, because the people in Ukraine, a lot of them want to come here. But if you're in that much, your life is in danger, it is that terrible that you want to get out, and then you actually pass through countries where you can ask for asylum, and you are there to try and get to a country by illegal means. No. But on your reasoning, Jeff,
where are the women and children? You see Ukraine, and there's thousands of women. I know the men are fighting, well, most of them, and you see them. But these are 90% men. So what are the women doing in Syria? Are they doing all the fighting and leaving the men and making a run for it and leaving the women to die?
Jeff, on your reasoning, Britain would never ever have an asylum seeker or refugee, because you'd say stop in the first European country you get to, on your reasoning.
Well, you should if you come by their route, because they're paying people. They've got enough money to pay, and it can't be like
people are fleeing for their lives, Jeff. Jeff, do you know?
And they have got. Yeah, I agree. But they should ask. It's illegal. They are passing through countries. You should ask for asylum in the first country.
Yeah, but that means that every asylum seeker.
Live in France.
Jeff,
I'm a Remainer. I'd love to be in the EU. I'd go to France in a heartbeat if I could remotely afford it. Jeff, but only earning 5p over minimum wage is a bit difficult.
Jeff, you would end up literally with the majority. Let's just talk about where the majority of asylum seekers come from. Where do you think the majority of asylum seekers come from who are crossing the Channel at the moment? What countries do you think they're coming from?
Syria, the Middle East, anywhere where there's a war, probably.
Right. So the majority of those crossing the Channel are coming from Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Those are the countries that they're coming from. Yeah. The vast majority of them would end up having to stay in Greece. In fact, Greece is at the moment hosting. Greece and Turkey have the lion's share of refugees, because those are the countries that are the closest. That is the truth of what is currently going on. And then you've got major European countries like Germany, who by far have the vast majority of people claiming asylum. Germany. Not the UK, Germany. Some will want to come here because they've got some connection here. They've got a cousin, they've got an aunt, they've got some reason why they want to come here. And you know, of course we should play our part. We learnt that in the Second World War, when the doors were closed to the Jewish people, left, right and centre, right across the globe. We picked up the baton and said, never, ever again. And now we're going to ship people off 4,000 miles to Rwanda.
And I am very happy about it, and still am after what you said. For those people who want to enter illegally, they're making Ukrainian women and children jump through hoops to try and stop them come with visas and all things. And you put the television on and it's hell on earth, and it's women and children. And you see these coming off their boats.
Ukrainians, yes.
Where are their women then? Where are the women? Because when you see Ukraine, it's women and 90-odd% women and children. And when you look at those migrants, they're all men.
Jeff,
young men.
How many safe routes?
Where are the women and children?
How many safe?
Where are the women and children?
Jeff, there are.
Have they left them fighting?
Jeff,
in
there
Syria
are no
and Iran?
safe routes into the UK. Hence, it's often men that think they'll take their lives into their own hands and cross the channel, and many of them die. 27 died last year.
Well, I think last year it was nigh on 30,000 managed to get here. And you're talking about the cost. I dread to think how much that's costing the country. So you might as well ship them off somewhere and pay the bills over there.
Look, and
let the Ukrainian people in.
Jeff, I've got to tell you, I am in contact with two young men that I met fleeing Iran in Calais 3 years ago. These young men survive on £5 a day as their asylum claims are processed. And they're young Jewish Iranians who are persecuted in Iran for being Jewish, by the way, and they're still waiting. And they're surviving on £5 a day. No work, can't work, they're just waiting. Because the Home Office, I'm afraid, is the lousiest government department in actually processing their claims. That's the reality, Jeff. It's the reality.
Ukrainians, but no, I don't agree. I'm sorry, you'll not change my mind. Those particular ones, and I'm being sticking to them because I want the Ukrainians. If I had another,
you're happy for the Ukrainians, but you're not happy for the Syrians, the Iranians, or Yemen, where they've had conflict. You know, Russia was bombing Aleppo. Did you see what happened in Syria? So it's fine for the Ukrainians, but not fine for the
because they're trying to come legally and do the right.
Why? Because they came illegal? No, Jeff, that doesn't make sense.
There is asylum. All the they sit for months in Calais, and people go over there as charities. You'd think France was Iran or something, and they were being persecuted. It's a wonderful country.
France take more refugees than we do. Jeff,
Italy,
France takes more refugees than we do.
Then why don't they ask for asylum? Why do they think
the majority do, Jeff?
On a little boat
Jeff,
and
the
get
majority
do to pick them up.
Jeff, the majority do. The majority do.
Just 1 year alone, it's 30,000. What is it up to now? I agree it's going to cost a lot of money, but you've got to stop.
But Germany's taken millions. What's 30,000 against Germany's millions? What are you talking about, Jeff?
I know, no, but they've took them. They're illegal. They can ask for asylum.
They're not illegal, Jeff. Jeff, 60% of them at the moment are actually end up staying here because they are legal. 60%.
Well, that's up to the government, isn't it, to make who's legal or not? They should stop them coming in.
But you said that they were illegal. They're not illegal. Jeff, they're not illegal.
That's what these things come to. Illegal asylum seekers will be removed. I mean, they should just turn around and send them back to France. They should have been doing that. They never have. Don't know why.
But why should they send them back to France? Should no one claim asylum in this country, Jeff, is the point.
Well, they've paid money in these countries and they've been promised it's the land of milk and honey, and it's not. It's tough for ordinary people living here. Unbelievably tough.
Of course it's tough for ordinary people.
At the moment,
Jeff, it's
trying to manage on $9.55 an hour just to see people come in and get everything thrown at them free just because they cross on a boat.
Why do you think it's tough for ordinary people in this country? Just because you've said that you're just on above the minimum wage. Why do you think it's tough for people like you and ordinary people in this country, do you think?
Well, it is right. It is for most people, anyway. Everything going through the roof.
I know, but why? Why is it? Why is it going wrong in this country, Jeff?
Well, it's going wrong for most countries. Everybody's energy prices are going through the roof.
Yeah.
Every fuel bill's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Every time you go to the shops, everything's gone up 20p, 30p.
We've got a shocking government, Jeff. That's what we've got. We've got a government that's given us austerity.
If it wasn't for the government, my pay rise would have been 5p, because that's all it really is, because the government insisted on 9.50, thank God, and the East of England Co-op decided to stick us another...
Energy bills?
Yes.
Precisely, and you didn't get one from the government. Do you think
No.
that the Chancellor should be have his wife who's a nom-dom and taking your taxes? But you got that from the government.
That's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, but yet you're blaming asylum seekers for your problems. That's a disgrace, Jeff, in my view.
They come in here because they've been told it's the milk and honey. They're not doing. There must be a legitimate way. Like the Ukrainians, they're making them go to embassies. They're making them fill forms in. They've got to get visas. I know they're putting quite a few obstacles in their way, but they've got to do that. There's thousands and thousands of people waiting to take Ukrainians, isn't there? Literally. And
Jeff, I've got someone. Jeff, I've just got someone texted. I hope David Lammy's LBC producer's got a strong coffee for him. Jeff, I've had a go. You're not persuaded. Thank you so much for calling in. I don't share your views, but thank you. Spencer in High Wycombe. Spencer.
Hello.
Hi, Spencer.
I don't think it's morally acceptable to have people traffickers and small boats across the Mediterranean and the Channel. I don't think that's an acceptable solution. And Rwanda is a better solution. And in answer to your question before, do I know any asylum seekers? Yes, I do. I've made friends with gay atheists from Muslim countries, and their lives are threatened. And I know that they would be happy to be safe somewhere than in a country which is threatening their lives. If it means that they have to spend a bit of time in Rwanda, that is not a problem. If it means saving their life.
Spencer, you accept that those coming across the Channel are coming from Iran, they're coming from Syria, they're coming from Yemen, they're coming from countries facing civil war and real hardship. You accept that, do you?
I don't see that there's a moral equivalence, that they're from war and someone else is being persecuted because they're gay and atheistic.
Yeah, people claim asylum for all sorts of reasons. I met many asylum seekers in Calais who were fleeing Iran because they were gay. So they're coming for a number of reasons. That is why they're fleeing. Do you accept that as people flee across the world, and particularly for us, the Horn of Africa, they're coming up, in the Middle East, they're coming up into Europe, do you accept that the lion's share of those refugees are currently going to Germany?
The reason why the Germans accept more refugees is because they have a population decline. Their population is declining.
Fine.
And that's why they're open to refugees as a society.
Great. Do you accept...
So it's not equivalent to the UK, which is...
Hang on a minute, Spencer, I'm going through the list because you sound like an intelligent man. So the lion's share of them are going to Germany. Many more are going on to France currently in the system. Many, many more are sitting in Greece and in Turkey. Do you accept that a small proportion, relative to the overall size, will want to make their way to the UK?
I think that we, as you stated, we have a history of helping refugees.
Yeah.
We shouldn't stop that. But what I'm saying is, if you're scared that you're going to get, if you get threat after threat after threat, that you're going to be killed, jumping on a plane to Rwanda is a good option.
Hang on a minute. Why wouldn't it be a good option to actually have some safe routes that the UK government organised with its European partners, working with its European partners, so that people didn't have to flee across the Channel? How about that as a way forward?
That is morally acceptable because you're accepting refugees, but I don't know whether that would be acceptable if the Labour Party had that policy. I don't know whether it would be acceptable to people, which is basically an open door policy.
It's not an open door policy because some people will not meet the test, unfortunately, and will have to be returned to their countries. But some people, at the moment, it's about 60%, are genuinely, clearly asylum seekers and refugees fleeing persecution and allowed into our country.
So you're saying we should protest them in Calais rather than let them...
That's a civilised system. That's a sort of civilised system that works, rather than at the moment we haven't got a system. So people take it into their hands.
I think it's far more civilised, rather than sitting in camps in Calais and processing people who are homeless in Calais. I think it would make a lot more sense for people to go direct to Rwanda if they feel that they're being that their lives are not safe and they need escape, they need somewhere safe to go, then that's a safe place to go, isn't it?
Spencer, you quite rightly raised the issue for those who are gay, and you said you had some gay friends that were fleeing asylum and would be happy to go to Rwanda. I've got to tell you, Rwanda is not considered a safe country for LGBTQ plus communities.
Well, I'm sure that they're not going to be normal citizens of Rwanda. They're going to be looked after by the British government. So,
my God! So, notwithstanding the fact that this is a country, and with tremendous hostility, where there have been successive human rights abuses against people who come from a gay background. Uganda next door has a horrific record in relation to gay people killed for being gay. You think it's okay to send gay people to Rwanda?
It would be not okay to send gay people to Rwanda if that made them unsafe. But I don't think it would make them unsafe, because as far as the Rwandans are concerned,
Spencer, I don't know what your sexuality is, but wouldn't you feel unsafe going to a country that kills people who are gay?
Not if I was protected by the British government. No, I wouldn't. Why would
the British government 4,000 miles away?
Well, yes. Why wouldn't they protect them? I mean, the choice is that, or stay in your own country and face death threats.
I mean, Spencer, this sounds pretty unforgiving from you. For those, you said that you cared about asylum seekers at the beginning. That sounds pretty unforgiving.
It's not acceptable. The current solution, which is small boats, is not acceptable.
Yeah, but that's because we've offered no safe. We haven't always had small boats. Small boats have been since the government shut down safe routes. That's why we've got the small boats.
Well, there's been small boats coming from Africa for a very, very long time. So the small boats are real.
This was not a...
They come from...
I'm sorry, I've been in Parliament 22 years, and the debates around the English Channel have largely taken place over the last decade or so, and have accelerated in recent times because of the lack of safe routes. And now we're not even part of the Dublin Convention. We're not part of the European Union. It's actually got worse, not better. Because the rules around you should be in the first port of call when you come into a European country no longer apply, because we left the European Union. So it's actually got worse, Spencer. That's why they're coming. But, as I say, they're coming in far less proportion than they are to many other European countries.
Okay. Well, I still think that if you're feeling unsafe and are genuinely threatened in the country you're living in, to stay in Rwanda for a couple of years to get processed is not the end of the world. You can sit in a bed sit in England, or you can sit in a bed sit in Rwanda, which is, if you're a genuine refugee,
you're not worried about the cost of sending them to this, to as you describe it, sitting in Rwanda for 2 years. You're not. That's a cost.
The benefit is it'll prevent
it won't. Didn't you hear the doctor before? It hasn't stopped people going to Australia. It won't stop people coming. They will still try, and the government have not said, by the way, that they're sending everybody coming across the channel. They said they're sending a selected amount of people coming across the channel. So it will not stop people coming. Spencer, that's a myth.
Okay.
Well, you sound mute now, Spencer. I hope you'll reflect on your views, Spencer, because I don't believe you can really be up for a system that's going to pay as much as it's going to cost, as much as this is going to cost. But thank you very much for calling in. Oh dear. Kevin in Brentford. Kevin.
Good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is now. A couple of points I'd like to make, David. First of all, have you been continually saying that this scheme is morally bankrupt and it's not taking into consideration the danger of the people that are leaving their countries and the persecution they're facing in those countries? Why are so many single men leaving their families behind in those precarious situations and not stopping at the first and the closest safe haven for them to be close to their families that are in the country where they're being persecuted, and doing their best to get as far away from them as possible, get into France, where they are being trafficked.
All right, Kevin.
Can I just finish my question, please, David? They are being trafficked by traffickers who are profiteering and risking lives, and some people have been killed crossing the channel. If you talk about morally bankrupt, these traffickers are morally bankrupt. They're profiteering from it, and this Rwanda scheme is the only deterrent that has been come up with that seems to make sense. It is a deterrent, and it will work if it's allowed to.
All right. So, Kevin, I don't know, Kevin, are you a family man? Have you got wife and kids?
Yes, I have.
You have, right. How many kids you got? How old are they? Can I ask?
They're grown-up children. I've got two.
Two, okay.
Yeah.
So, I've got 3 children. If I fled Iran, Syria, Yemen, a country like that, I made my way into Europe. I'm sort of, in my head, of course, I'm English. I would want to make my way to England. I'm Christian. I'd have relatives here. I speak English or something. I'd want to get to England. Say that I was sat in a camp in France. My judgment, hang on, just listen to me, Kevin. My judgment would be, I tell my wife and kids, I'm going to try and make it across, claim asylum, and then I'll send for you guys. I'm not sure I would want to put my 8-year-old, my 14-year-old, my 16-year-old, and my wonderful wife into a boat and want to risk their lives as I made it across. I try and do it for them. That would be my instinct. I don't know, Kevin, if you can relate to that on behalf of the kids that you've got.
I can relate to it.
So that meets your first point. Why is it often men that come?
You never actually answered the question. You never answered the question. That doesn't relate.
No, Kevin, that was the first point you made. That was the first point you made.
Doesn't relate. Your answer doesn't relate to that. And
well, hang on, Kevin. I'm just answering the first question. Then you moved on. You moved on to say we've got to deal with the traffickers. That was the next question that you raised. Is that fair?
Rwanda is a deterrent.
Hang on a minute,
Kevin.
Yes. You then raised the question of trafficking, right? Now we've seen. Kevin, let's just deal with that point now.
We never dealt with the first one, by the way.
The first point you raised, Kevin, was the point around why is it men and not women and children. I've just tried to deal with that.
No, I didn't deal with that. I asked you, why would they leave their families behind whose lives have been threatened in their country?
They're often not leaving their families behind, Kevin. Their families are sitting in camps. I don't know if you've been to Calais. Have you met a refugee? Have you been?
No,
have you seen these camps? Well, I'm telling you what I've seen, Kevin.
When they've left the country of origin where they are supposedly being persecuted, why are they leaving their women and children there? In danger,
well, Kevin,
and
you sound like you've convinced yourself of your own argument.
No, it sounds like you haven't got an answer.
No,
David.
Kevin, you're not listening.
Well,
are you?
Then answer my question, please. You're not
listening, Kevin. You sound angry. You don't sound like you're listening. You're not listening because what I've said is my experience of those camps is it's packed full of women and children. But people don't want their women and children to cross the channel because it could mean death. Okay, and you would do the same thing, Kevin. That's my response to you on that point.
Can I respond to that then?
Go on.
Do you remember the bodies they pulled out of the channel? They pulled bodies out of the channel, right?
They pulled many bodies out of the channel, including children.
They pulled those bodies out of the channel. Then they went back to their parents who were still in the countries that they left. You saw the grieving father saying that that his daughter had phoned him. So what I'm saying is, why would their mother and father still be in that country and they've left those countries?
Kevin, come on. Come on, Kevin, mate. You understand that. A lot of people are going to leave. There are people, there are elderly in Ukraine who haven't left Ukraine. They don't feel able to. They've got bad knees, bad hips, whatever. They're going to stay in the country they've been in. We know that.
Okay, what would your answer be?
Why have you got a problem with that, Kevin?
Deter the traffickers then. What's your answer about deterring traffickers?
Kevin, you can only deal with the traffickers if you do it working with other countries in a multilateral way. That is the only way you're going to deal with traffickers. And by the way, even with this crisis in Ukraine, we've seen traffickers, we've seen sex traffickers. Traffickers will always prey on vulnerable people. But what is going on at the moment is because there are no safe routes, of course traffickers set up in France and say, well, look, we'll try and get you across if you pay us this amount of money. That's going to happen because there are no safe routes.
Don't you think that's morally
Of course
bankrupt?
it's morally wrong.
Rather than giving them the
Kevin,
option of going to Rwanda or staying in a safe country.
How is this going to stop? How is this going to stop the traffickers, do you think, the Rwandan thing? Did you listen to the doctor earlier from Australia? It didn't stop them.
Can I answer your question? If you're saying to someone that's in a safe country, which is in France, where they have put themselves, if you leave that safe country and come to England, we will then send you to Rwanda. Now, if you've got a choice between staying in France or going to Rwanda, the choice you make is then based on the economics and the economics of choice. So they will be deterred from doing those dangerous crossings if they think they're going straight from there to Rwanda.
Kevin, let's be clear. The government have already said not everybody crossing will go to Rwanda. They said a selected few will go to Rwanda. They have said that. That's in the blueprint. Is it really going to deter?
So do you not agree? Do you not agree that it would be? And by the way,
Kevin, I'm going to tell.
By the way, if I was Rwandan, I would take great offence of some of the things you said about Rwanda.
Kevin, I suggest you go and read the Human Rights Watch report on Rwanda, read Amnesty International on Rwanda, read the UN on Rwanda, read our own government's assessment of Rwanda. Google the president. Do you know who the president of Rwanda is, Kevin?
I don't.
No. Google his name, Kagame, and find out. You'll find out quite a lot about Rwanda.
If you were talking about Jamaica in the same context, you'd say it was wrong. And it's wrong to talk
why have you brought Jamaica into it? What's it got to do with Jamaica? Why have you brought Jamaica into it?
I'm just picking out a country.
Well, it's a very interesting random country to pick out. What's Jamaica got to do with this? Jamaica's not one of the sites the government's been considering.
No, I know it's not, but I picked it out because my mother's Jamaican was part of the Windrush generation. So I've just picked it out as randomly. And what I'm saying is, if you were talking about Jamaica in the same context as you were talking about Rwanda...
But Jamaica's a completely separate country. It doesn't make sense.
You've got no right to speak about Rwanda in this fashion because there's no reason for it.
I'm sorry. I don't know why you brought Jamaica into the story, but I think the listeners will make up their own minds. Thank you very much for calling in. I don't share your views, Kevin. I really, really don't. But it's important that you're able to air them because we do have freedom of speech in this country. Thank you very much for calling in. Elizabeth in Islington. Elizabeth.
Hi, good afternoon. First time caller. Absolutely furious. Good job. Send them to Rwanda. We've got a hotel where we live. There's 300 young men in there. They've been in there for a year, and they reckon they're going to be in there for another 3 years. There's no women, no children, just young men on their mobiles. They set the smoke alarms off once a week so they can get outside and smoke. Everybody's bending backwards for them. They give them free coffee, free trainers, free clothes. You know, what the hell's going on? You keep saying immigrants. They're not immigrants. They're illegal immigrants.
Hang on a minute, Elizabeth. I don't know about the young men in that hotel, but I do know.
Well, I do, because I live next door to it. I can't book a hotel for 3 years.
Elizabeth, it's shocking that the government have been so hopeless at processing claims in the Home Office that they're sat there next to you in a hotel for 3 years. That's the government screwing up. That's not the young men. That's the government who can't process their... How do you know they're illegal? Hang on, Elizabeth.
Because have you seen the video of them coming over on the boats and the police won't let us near them on the coast and there's men shaking their hands?
Elizabeth,
come on, I'll help you out.
Elizabeth,
what the hell's going on?
Elizabeth, I've got to say to you, to describe any human being as illegal, and certainly to describe someone claiming asylum or refuge illegal, before it may turn out once you've processed the claim that they shouldn't be here, in which case they should be sent back to where they come. But you cannot describe someone as illegal until their claim has been processed. How would you feel? You must look at the scenes of people fleeing Ukraine and feel compassion for them. Right,
yes, I certainly do. And their young men are fighting for their country. All these others are over here running away from their country. Let them go and fight for their country, like Ukraine is.
Oh, but Elizabeth, I don't know. I can't tell how old you are, Elizabeth, and I'm not
74.
It's not. Well, then, Elizabeth, you've been around long enough to know that all countries have different stories. Some young men may flee because if they stay, they'll get called into, I don't know what it is, the Taliban or whatever, and they'll have to fight for a side that they can't bear to fight for because that side killed a relative at some point some young men will flee because they're sent ahead to make way for a family to come. Sorry?
How long do we stand for this?
What do you mean, how long do we stand for it? How long do we
paying out all these they're on the dole and they're in these camps.
Yeah, but and
in the hotels.
I've told you that's because the Home Office is useless, hopeless. I mean, at the moment we've got passport queues because they're so hopeless. Let alone processing. They're just useless. Blame Priti Patel, Elizabeth. Don't blame the poor old asylum seeker.
Good luck to Priti Patel. I hope she stays in for years. Good luck to her. About time she done something, backed her ideas up and got rid of them. That's all I'm going to say. Goodbye.
I've got to tell you, Elizabeth, I don't share your views. I'm very interested to see the people listening. Pat in Surrey. Pat, thank you for calling in.
Hello?
Hi, Pat. Thank you for calling in.
Hi. Well, I admire you terrifically for your attitude to this great problem that we've got with immigration. It wouldn't surprise me if you say that you've got a couple of immigrants living with you. But that isn't the point, whether you have or you haven't. If you were to say, I've got a spare room, I've got 2 beds in it, I'll take 2 immigrants. And they say, oh, can you take 10? And you say, oh, all right, but where the dickens are you going to put the other 8? Well, isn't that the dilemma the country's in? We don't mean to be cruel. We don't mean to it. But what is so worrying, it comes across as if we don't care. But we haven't got anywhere to put them.
Hang on a minute, Pat.
And we haven't got the houses or the infrastructure.
Pat, can we just stop for a second, Pat?
Can you speak up a bit? The line to you is not good, and it's a shame.
Pat, can I just say, Pat, you said immigrants. Now, my parents were immigrants. They came from the Caribbean after the Second World War as part of that Windrush generation. They were economic immigrants coming for a better life. At that stage, they had been invited to come to the United Kingdom because they were part of the British Empire. We're not here talking about immigrants. We're talking about people fleeing civil war, fleeing persecution, fleeing hardship, tremendous hardship as a result usually of civil war, because we're talking on the whole, in this context, we're talking about people coming from countries like Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and recently Ukraine. So it's not the same as those coming who are immigrants, in the same way that, because immigrants on the whole, when they come to a country, stand on their own 2 feet. They come economically and they stand on their own 2 feet. These are people coming and they're saying, please help me. I'm being persecuted for whatever reason. We then have to establish whether they're telling the truth. And actually the record shows that most people who come as refugees have got a hell of a lot of get up and go, because the vast majority of people stay and struggle in their country and the rest go to neighbouring countries. They don't come as far as places like the United Kingdom. So those that do make it here usually are very, very strong and go on to do extraordinary things. That's what history shows on the whole. Refugees tend to do extraordinary things. Indeed, as we celebrate Easter, we're celebrating in so many ways one of the best known refugees, that refugee called Jesus Christ.
So we haven't got a problem.
Well, I'm not.
They'll all go to work and everything, and it's going to be fine. And somewhere for them to sleep.
Pat, we may have a problem, but isn't the problem that the Home Office is so useless it can't process people, so they can't get a job and get on with their lives and make a contribution to our economy? Isn't that the problem?
That's it, but nobody seems to be able to sort it out. The Labour Party haven't got the answer. I'm not criticising them. And I'm not criticising.
Well, we haven't now been in power for 12 years.
So big. And the people with money, the wealthy people, are clearing out, and they provide the government with the money to do these things. But like you and me, we've only got so much space in our house to take them. We can't take more. It's terrible. But if there were 10 people standing outside my house needing somewhere, I'd have to leave 8 at least outside in the rain because I've only got room for 2.
But
and you're in the same position. Perhaps you've got a spare room and you're going to take 2 immigrants.
Pat, hang on a minute. Pat, just a second. Because what we've seen is that the government announced this scheme for people coming from Ukraine, and the British people have signed up in their hundreds of thousands to offer rooms for these people. But actually, the government's been so slow that the vast majority of those people have not been allocated. So it actually turns out that there is room, because the British people have said, please, come and stay with me.
Well, yes, that is true. But even when they get here, and if every single one of them was housed, the schools are full, the National Health Service is overcrowded, at least I think we should warn them, and those of us that are already here, we must warn them that the standard of living is going to drop and that we're not going to be able to carry on the way we are because there isn't enough money. Like any household, there isn't enough money to go round, so we're going to have to cut back our standard of living. But nobody seems to have the courage to tell either us, the British population that's already here, or those that are coming in. That's another question.
When you say, Pat,
it's not just a UK problem, is it? It's a European problem. The French obviously don't want them. That's why they're stuck in France, hoping that they'll get across to here.
Actually,
because they haven't got the answer either.
I've got to tell you, at the moment, France takes many more refugees than us. The refugees who are sitting in outside Calais are there principally because they want to come to the UK, and they principally want to come to the UK because they have a relationship with the UK of some sort. That's why they are there. Pat, I could talk to you for a very long time. I don't think we fully agree. I could talk to you for a very long time, but thank you very much for calling in. There's something about your voice, Pat. It reminds me of an old colleague of mine, Anne Widdicombe, but thank you for calling in. Sarah in Reading. Sarah.
Hi, David. Thanks for taking my call.
Not at all. Thank you, Sarah.
I'm fuming. I'm just so angry. I'm angry at Elizabeth's comments and Pat just now. My parents fled East Africa because of Idi Amin, and they came to the UK. They were lucky. They came to the UK because my grandfather had a British passport, and they obviously, Kenya, East Africa was part of the British colony. They came here. But my dad used to say to me, if that didn't occur, they would never have come here. Like, my father would never have come here, and nor would have my grandfather. But they were fleeing a country where, at the time, Idi Amin did not want non-blacks in that country.
And I think it's right that we housed or about 80,000 Ugandan Asians particularly made their way to the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And they built their lives here.
Exactly. And my point is how
and they've massively contributed to the
my
UK
parents
economy as a
worked
result.
Here. Yeah. Well, my whole family. My granddad used to work for the railways. And, yeah, I mean, my family that came from East Africa have contributed massively. And, I'm proud to call myself British, of course. I was born here and I've educated myself through university and whatever. But what just infuriates me is people's perception and ideology that people that are coming here are just coming here to take the mick and to milk whatever the government can give to them. It's just unbelievable. It's just to think that these people are coming here because they're fleeing their countries because of persecution, because of war. If those things weren't going on, do you think they really would have come here? I don't think they would have. They probably might have had a better life. But to say that, they're just coming here and, I'm not going to be able to live in a hotel for 3 years and all of this stuff, it's just unbelievable. It just makes my blood boil that, to kind of tarnish everyone with the same brush, to say that they're coming here and they just want to, milk the government of all the social benefits that they can have and they don't want to work. Of course they want to work. Of course they want to make a life for themselves. I don't think anyone comes here just to think, I'm just going to sit back and, do nothing.
Sarah, Sarah,
yeah.
Look, I share your view. Thank you for the passion with which you make it, and thank you for reminding us of the contribution that your family made coming from Uganda. Susan, I think Susan's calling in from the so-called Red Wall. Susan in Bury, North Manchester.
Yes, I'm just coming up for a breath of fresh air from the sewer. Can I just say a quick thing about Christian Wakeford when he crossed the floor? I used to live, I live in North Bury now, and I was in South Bury. And as regards the high school in Radcliffe, now for 30 years, because it took me years to twig why we never got this high school in Radcliffe, and it was because we'd always returned Labour MPs, and they tried for years and years and years to get this high school in Radcliffe. My daughter had to go into Bury to be able to go to a high school, and then suddenly, when we've got these two Conservative MPs,
you get your school.
we get the money. We get the money. Now, as regards the Red Wall seats, I think that these areas were central government starved them of
money and resources. That's
you've
right.
only got to walk round these places, and then they.
Do you think they will buy this, Susan? Will they buy this?
Labour seats, they blame it on Labour when really Labour are struggling because they haven't got the money, and they think, they'll promise us this and they'll promise us that. So they get so desperate that they vote Conservative, and you can't really blame people for sort of wanting to think, well, perhaps there'll be a change, but there ain't going to be a change, really. There ain't going to be a change.
What do you think they make of sending folk to Rwanda with the costs that will be associated with this?
Well, I think it's appalling that there isn't a legal route
to come to this country.
No, if I was in Syria and I was being barrel bombed, I'm not going to think, right, I must go and I'll go to that town and get a visa and hang around for 4 weeks, 5 weeks while it's approved, while I'm being barrel bombed or chemical sort of weapons used against me. Yeah. You're going to pick up your whatever and you're going to run, aren't you?
Yeah. And you might think that you want to run to France if you can speak a bit of French or German, but or you've got some family who made it to Germany 20 odd years ago and they're there and you might want to go and join them. But equally, you might have a cousin or an uncle in London and you think, well, I'm going to try and get to them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm 72 And hopefully, I might be dead in 10 years and I won't have to worry about this anymore.
Don't say that, Susan. Don't say that, Susan. I hope that you see something else prevail in this country.
I have written to my MP, but it's just so upsetting.
I can see, Susan, it is upsetting. I've got to tell you, let me be honest, yesterday, there have been some moments where I've just felt so low with how low this government can get. One was the Sewell report last year, where I was actually on air at the time and I just couldn't take any calls. I just didn't do it. It was just disrupting my mental health. And then yesterday when I saw this, I was actually glad that I wasn't on air and that I wasn't doing any media yesterday, because I just needed to take breath. I needed to take stock. I needed not to be speaking into the heat of it. It feels a bit better today, but I just find it so unbelievably morally bankrupt. It's just so utterly depressing. But Susan, keep the faith. There are many more people out there that agree with you.